Hello and welcome back, everyone. If this is your first time, welcome. This is the Kickstarter Weekly. Today I'll be talking about the 4 games that I've played since the last video, the 5 campaigns that are completing their funding during this period, any games that I personally pledged since last week's video, and then finally, any games I acquired into my collection. So if any of those new acquisitions are games that you're specifically interested in, you'd like a teach or a review for, let me know in the comment section. Now, I always do bookmark tabs in my videos, so if there's something that you're specifically interested in, you can just go to that section. And as far as the campaign games go, if you go down into the description, there are links to each individual campaign. So when you're watching that section, if there's a campaign that you're specifically interested in, you can just go down to that description, click on the link, and go right to the campaign, look at it some more, maybe back it if you like. I'll probably be launching a Patreon in the next few months, but until then, the best way to support the channel is to like and subscribe. So please don't forget to do that, and let's move forward and talk about the 4 games that I played this week. The first of these is Barrage, which I've played online a couple times in the last month or so, but I had the opportunity to play my physical copy. This was a copy that I kickstarted, and there were a lot of production problems with this game. They had to redo certain things, reship certain things. It took several shipments. I think they did an additional campaign to help them fund some fixes. Well, one thing that there was an issue with are these resource wheels that you use during the game. You're going to be putting certain machineries on this wheel when you take an action, when you build something, and then you spin the wheel. Now, the first set of wheels had spokes where the machineries would go underneath the spokes. It would bend the spokes of the wheel, which wasn't very good, but even more so as you're playing that game, you could lose track of which section the machineries were supposed to be in. So they did a fix for that eventually. They made a simpler wheel where there was kind of a backing on the top part that all the machinery sat on that turned with the wheel. So there was no longer a risk of things going underneath the spokes. But they were a little cheaper, and not everyone loved that, so they eventually produced wooden wheels, which are, thicker and sort of a better quality, but they're expensive, so they were something that people had to pledge for separately. There were just a lot of other production problems as well. The conceit of the game is that you're building dams and power stations and conduits, and then you are powering certain amounts of water and scoring points by doing so. As you kind of build your pipe networks, those droplets of water will travel down pipe systems, and so you can get an engine going where you're using that water in one area and then later funneling it into another area and using it to score points there as well. It's a really, really good game. I really like this game. It reminds me a lot of Lacerda's, and he's my favorite designer. And production-wise, there was a lot of ambition that went into this game. They have a 3-dimensional board, again, because you're talking about water and dams and water flowing downhill. So they did a 3-dimensional board that plays on 3 different levels. But again, there were production problems. So when I played it this past weekend, it was my chance to kind of go through all of my components and make sure I took out everything that was no longer needed. Everything that had been replaced or substandard components. It was nice to finally get that done and be able to play it in person again. I'd played it once right before the pandemic hit after the game had delivered, and then I wasn't doing meetups for a while. And this is just a heavier game that's hard to teach, it's hard to get played, so it wasn't something that I'd played again since the beginning of the pandemic. But it's such a fun game to play, and it was a joy to play it in person this last week. And now I have everything, together. There is also a solo automa system that's pretty deep. There's a lot of stuff going on with that. So I'm looking forward to getting my feet wet with that and playing that. I'll let you know what I think about that once I do. And there's also a lot of expansion content. There's additional factions, some additional mechanics if you've got the Leewater project. I would love to play this game a lot more. But it's a longish game. It's a pretty big teach. There's a lot going on in the game. So I'll have to grab those opportunities when I can. But I'm really excited to play it more, both trying out the solo game and getting deeper into the multiplayer game and using more officers, which are kind of these little additions that give you some variable player powers, and the additional mechanics that come in that expansion, the Leewater project. Now, I'm going to rate this one a 9.0. That's how much I like it. It is on Board Game Arena, so if you don't have the game or don't have access to the game, you can play it online, and that's a great way to get your feet wet in the game. Also, the setup on Board Game Arena is pretty good, and it does a lot of the work for you component-wise, so there's less to deal with. I mentioned I'd been playing it online a little bit lately, and it's nice when all that stuff is done by the UI. And when we were playing it in person, we had to deal with components a lot more, than you do online. And so that was also a little bit interesting to be like, oh, right, we have to set up all these things and deal with the starting tiles and seeding the waterways. But it's a great game. It's got really good components, and it's a game that's very tactile, so it's fun to play. I played Caper Europe during this period 6 different times. This is a 2-person version of an older game called Caper, and it's essentially an area control game with card play, and you're kind of vying for these 3 different locations. And there's a series of rounds where you're putting out different thieves who are stealing art from these different locations and alternating those with rounds where you give them various kinds of gear. In each of those 3 locations, you're doing sort of a tug of war for area control for those locations. And if you win those locations by the end of the game, you'll activate a scoring bonus for that location. You'll also score some points for your cards. There's an interesting system with money where there's a set amount of money. So if you get to a point in the game where you need more money and there's no central money, you'll actually start taking it from the other player. There's a good amount of take that in the game. Not always, it depends what cards come up. And whenever you're playing this, you're in a different city. I think there are 3 different cities in addition to the just kind of general base game, and they all have some additions to scoring. I'd say this is one of my favorite 2-player games out there, and once you know what you're doing, it's pretty quick to set up and quick to play, and it offers good decisions. You can even play it in a relatively small space. There's not a lot of components. It doesn't take up a lot of table space, but it's a great game. It offers really good choices for 2 players in a short time period. So if you have an opportunity and you like, 2-player head-to-head games with a lot of contentiousness and back and forth and tug of war, it's a really good one, and I'd recommend picking it up. I'm rating Caper Europe an 8.5. I also played a game called Jekyll versus Hyde, which is a trick-taking game. There's a little bit of a deduction involved just because you're trying to figure out what cards the other players have. And the way that it works is that it's another 2-player head-to-head game. One person is Hyde, one person is Jekyll. The person playing Jekyll wants the distribution of the trick-taking wins to be equal. So that player wants, in a given round, wants one player, say, to win 4 hands and the other player to win 4 hands as well. They want that to be equal. So sometimes you're trying to win tricks, sometimes you're trying to lose tricks. Hyde, on the other hand, wants an all-or-nothing situation, but it doesn't matter which way it goes. So they want to either lose as many tricks as possible or win as many tricks as possible. It's pretty unique in that sense. I think that you're playing a trick-taking game, but there's this variable dynamic, and what you want to do, at least as the Hyde character, could change a little bit during the round. You're going to try to figure out which way it's going early on and then lean into that. And based on the imbalance of trick-taking victories, there'll be a marker that advances across a track. And after 3 rounds, if that marker has advanced all the way to Hyde, Hyde will win. If it hasn't, then Jekyll will win. I'm not a huge fan of trick-taking games in general, and it took me playing through the game once, I think, to get a little more familiar with it. There's also a mechanism in the game where there are 3 different tokens, and they will interact during or at the end of a round, but which token activates will in some ways depend on which of 3 different sets of colored cards gets activated first. So there's some decision making there as well. Which set of cards do you want to play first? which set of cards do you want to try to hold until later in the round so that that token can then be activated. I would play the game again, I think, a couple more times to get a better feel for it, but I didn't love it, and I'm not a huge fan of trick-taking games in general. I think this one has some interesting and unique aspects to it, so if you do like trick-taking games, I think you definitely want to check this one out. It's also available on Board Game Arena, and it has art from Vincent Dutrait, which is one of my favorite parts of it because I love his art. So for me, right now, I'm giving Jekyll versus Hyde a 5.5, which is a very, very mediocre score. I think if I were to play it a bit more and sort of explore the strategy more, that rating would go up a bit. But this kind of trick-taking game is never really going to be my game. But I think if you do like trick-taking games, it very much could be a game for you. If something like The Fox and the Forest is a game that really appeals to you, I have a feeling you might like Jekyll versus Hyde even more. And this is, I think, a harder game to find. It's a little bit of an older game, so I'm not sure where it is in printing and availability. But as I mentioned, it is on Board Game Arena. And this is probably a game that works really well on Board Game Arena. It has a very easy to use UI. So this could be a kind of a go-to game for someone that likes trick-taking games on Board Game Arena. Finally, I played The Loop one more time. I've been playing this one solo a lot lately, but I was able to play it in person with a friend over the last week. We just played the introductory game. We actually won. I don't have too much more to say about it, but for anyone who hasn't heard me talk about it before, I'll just say that it is heavily dependent on kind of card activation and various powers on cards. There's variable player powers. The game comes with 4 different missions, and generally what you're trying to do is limit the amount of clones that the evil Dr. Foe is spawning in 7 different eras through time. The more you can limit that, the more you'll limit these cubes that come off of a cube tower into those eras at the beginning of every turn. And then you're trying to fulfill 4 different missions before the game ends. How they are revealed depends on various factors, so there's some randomization there, and it allows for more variability. There's also a lot of variability depending on which characters you're playing, and the cards themselves are so much fun to play with. This is a lighter co-op game. For me, it's the game that I think is going to have me just get rid of Forbidden Island forever. I also have Horrified, so I think my 2 go-tos for lighter co-ops now are going to be Horrified and The Loop. And I'm trying to complete The Loop on all the various scenarios. There's 2 additional expansions out there. I believe the first one, The Revenge of Fozilla, has 2 additional scenarios and 2 additional characters. And then there's a smaller expansion that's just about to be released, and I believe that one has 1 more scenario and 2 additional characters. And that one's kind of pet focused, so the characters in that smaller expansion, there's a cat and a dog. And I like the variability in the game. I like the various missions. So these are expansions I probably will look at picking up at some point in the future. It's just such a fun game. And I'd be really interested to play it at higher player counts where the chaos would just be even greater. And I'm going to stick with the score that I've been giving The Loop the last several times I've talked about it, which is an 8.5. So to sum up, this week I'm giving Barrage a 9.0, Caper Europe an 8.5, Jekyll vs. Hyde a 5.5, and The Loop an 8.5. Now let's go ahead and look at the 5 campaigns that are going to be completing funding during this week, the period from November the 14th through the 20th. The first of these is Canvas Finishing Touches, which had a minimum required funding goal of $50,000. They're currently at $562,000, which is about 11 times that minimum required funding goal. Canvas Finishing Touches is going to complete its campaign on Tuesday, November the 15th. It's a game for 1 to 5 players. It does have a solo mode. Plays in about 30 minutes. Complexity on the game is light, and we're going to set the risk associated with this campaign at medium-low. Now, they did a Kickstarter for the base game a couple of years ago. They've done one expansion previously, and this is the second and final expansion. They've got deluxe versions for all 3 games. It's a pretty cool triptych of covers. So if you look at the covers of the base game and the 2 expansions side to side, it creates this big kind of watercolor vista. It looks really, really cool. And if you've ever played a game like Mystic Vale or maybe Edge of Darkness or even Dead Reckoning, those are all John D. Clare games, but they use this mechanic called layering, where they've got cards that are kind of see-through. Another game that does that is Gloom, and you're going to be combining these various cards on top of each other. As you do that, you're creating sort of a painting on any one card, and you're getting all of these various icons that will be visible on the bottom. So the way that you layer and stack them will give you various icons showing and a painting. And the goal of this game is to kind of get different icons to score you set collection bonuses. There's some hand management involved and a lot of set collection. And with the first expansion, they added in some more cards, some more ways to score points, and sort of a bigger market. I think in the original game, the market that you're choosing cards from is a 5-card market. With the first expansion, it became an 8-card market. With this newest expansion, they're adding in these frames, so when you finish a painting, you'll get to slot it in a frame, get an even different kind of token that can score some points. There's also an additional scoring mechanic, and they've introduced these painters, which give you variable player powers. It's co-designed by Jeff Chin and Andrew Nerger, who've previously worked on After Nova, the original Canvas, and Crypt. They've worked on all 3 of those games together. The art on this newest expansion is by Lewin Hun, who's been working on all of the Canvas games. And it's being published by Road to Infamy Games. That is Jeff and Andrew's company. So they've previously published After Nova, all of the Canvas games, and Crypt. Now for $35, you can get the new expansion, Finishing Touches. For $50, you can pledge for just the base game. For $70, you can pledge for both expansions. So that's the new expansion and the previous expansion. And finally, for $120, you can pledge the complete Canvas trilogy. That's the base game and both expansions. Now, this game is very, very pretty. The card art's very pretty. The boxes are very pretty. And if you have a Kickstarter edition, you've got these great wooden tokens, these wooden ribbons that you'll be awarded whenever you fulfill a certain set collection goal. If you have the retail version, you only have cardboard tokens. So if you have the retail version of the game and you'd like to upgrade it to the Kickstarter editions without having to just rebuy it, there are some upgrade packs available in the add-ons. You can do that there. Upgrade pack number 1 is $10. That's just going to have additional cards that were only available in the Kickstarter edition. Upgrade pack number 2 is $15. And that's going to have all of those wooden ribbon markers. So that will upgrade the cardboard ribbon markers from the retail version. Finally, for $15, you can add on the upgrade pack for Reflections. That was the first expansion. And that's sort of a combination of some additional cards that were available through that Kickstarter, as well as wooden tokens for the ribbons that were introduced in that expansion. Shipping in the continental US is $12 per game and then $6 for each additional game. So if you're doing either the new expansion or the base game, your estimated shipping is $12. The third pledge with both expansions is $18, and then the last pledge with everything, with the base game and both expansions, that's going to have an estimated shipping of $24. Finally, Road to Infamy Games is planning on delivering Canvas Finishing Touches in August of 2023. Next up is Oathsworn Into the Deepwood 2nd edition. This one had a minimum required funding goal of $50,000. They're currently at $2.7 million, which makes this the richest campaign of the week of the video. And they have a multiplier of 53.5 times that minimum required funding goal. So it's also the biggest multiplier of the week. Oathsworn is also going to complete its campaign on Tuesday, November the 15th. This is a game for 1 to 4 players, plays in about 30 to 90 minutes. Complexity on the game is heavy, and we're going to set the risk associated with this campaign at medium-high. Now, this one is a dungeon crawler that uses action points and hand management. It's very much about the narrative choices that you make. It's got some really cool mechanics, things that haven't really been used before. There's a combat system that is kind of push your luck with something they call exploding dice. There's variable player powers, and there's kind of the Euro-style cooldown system they're calling Battle Flow. Now, this is a second printing for them. This is a chance to go back, offer it up to people again in its entirety. They are including a few new things as well. And this was a huge success. Right now it has a 9.2 rating on Board Game Geek, which is amazing. And I've heard nothing but glowing reviews about it. Even comparing it to big games in the industry like Gloomhaven, people are still very favorable when comparing it to Oathsworn. So the main reason that I'm calling the campaign a medium-high risk is just because they've only really done, this publisher has only really done one campaign before, and that was Oathsworn. And these are big dungeon crawl games with a lot of miniatures, but they did an amazing job the first time out, and if they continue to produce on that same level, then the publisher will quickly get downgraded, as far as I'm concerned, in that risk level. But for now, I just have to have some consistency, so they've only really run one big successful campaign. I've already downgraded them from high to medium high, and I plan on downgrading them more in the future if they continue to do as well as they have. Oathsworn is designed by Jamie Jolly, who previously designed a game called Farsight, and it's got art from 5 different designers. Francesca Berald has previously worked on Battle for Rokugan, Gloomhaven, Jaws of the Lion, and Frosthaven. And then it's also got art from Vladimir Buchik, Sean Jackson, Dongjun Liu, and Dongbao Liu. And the publisher here is called Shadowborn Games. For $125, you can pledge the base game standee version that also comes with a companion app with full narration. I don't believe that companion app is required for the game, as it is with some other dungeon crawlers, but it is there, it is available, and it will potentially enhance your experience with that full narration. For $225, you can pledge the core pledge that's going to add on 2 things, 2 mystery boxes. Now, these are both boxes with miniatures. I think the fact that they're called mystery boxes is because they want you only going in there as you're playing the game, as you're discovering encounters. So that way you don't really know what's coming. You don't know what kind of monsters you're going to be fighting or encountering. It will be sort of a new experience as you're playing it, as you're discovering things. Then you'll also be discovering the miniatures, which is a really neat idea. For $375, you can pledge the Collector's All-In. That's going to add in a whole bunch of other things to that second level pledge. And I'll talk about these items in more detail when I go over them as add-ons. But you'll be getting a terrain box, an armory box, a map pack, metal coins, a dice tray, a premium dice set, a new secret box, a pouch pack, and a hardback art book. Now, if you don't want to go all in, but you want to get some of those things, you can add them on piecemeal. The terrain box is $45. That's going to include 5 trees, 2 houses, and 6 stone walls. The armory box is $35, and that has 69 different customizable weapons. So the idea here is you're going to be able to take these weapons and slot them into your miniatures, depending on what weapons you find during your campaign, what things you upgrade. And there are enough of these customizable weapons that you'll be able to handle any possible weapon loadout in the game. It's another pretty cool idea. For $15, you can add on a map pack that's 8 different kind of poster-sized maps, so you'll get just a bigger, better look at the maps that you're interacting with over the course of the campaign. For $25, you can add on metal coins. That's going to include 70 metal coins. For $20, you can add on the dice tray. That is faux leather, and it's going to have the big O, the Oathsworn symbol, branded into the middle. For $25, you can add on the premium dice set. That's 28 different dice in 4 different colors. For $10, you can add on metal dice. There are 4 of these. These are hit point dice. Now they're textured. I believe they're described as oil soaked. They look really, really neat. And I don't believe that they're included with any of the pledge levels. So if this is something that you want, you will need to add these on. For $15, you can also add on the secret box. This is new with this campaign. It wasn't there before. You will be getting it with the all-in pledge. The contents are unknown. And I don't like to spoil things, so I haven't researched it to find out what it is. I imagine it's some new miniatures and some other items. For $30, you can add on the pouch pack, and this is another pretty cool idea. So it's going to have 15 different sacks. One of them is for coins, one of them is for dice, and then the other 13 are designed to be used as a save system for the various characters. So if you're stopping playing during the campaign, you can put all of your stuff for any one character in one of these bags, and then you'll have it ready to go when you want to play again. The hardback art book is $25. You can add sleeves for $15, and that's going to include 255 standard sleeves and 130 mini sleeves. And these sleeves are the second item here that I'm talking about in the add-on section that aren't included in any of the pledge levels. So if you want sleeves, you need to add them on. There's also 2 different upgrade packs, and these are not included in any of the pledges either. These are for people who pledged the first edition and they want to upgrade it to the new second edition because there have been some corrections, some small improvements. So the first upgrade pack is $15, and that's just going to include upgrades for things like character abilities, encounter books, and rule books. It's called First to Second Print Upgrade Pack. For $95, you can add on the First to Second Print all the new stuff. That's going to include that upgrade pack, but also some gameplay things that weren't available the first time around, the things that are new with this campaign, besides the metal dice and the sleeves that aren't in any of those pledges. So these new items are the dice tray, the premium dice set, the pouch pack, and the new secret box. So if you have the first edition already and you're just looking to get the extra things that are new to this campaign, that would be the way to do it. Shipping in the continental US has been estimated at $33, $39, and $49. So each of those estimates is for each of the 3 pledge levels. And Shadowborn Games is planning on delivering Oathsworn in October of 2023. From there, we go to the Queen's Dilemma, which had a minimum required funding goal of $85,000. They're currently at $547,000, which is about 6.5 times that minimum required funding goal. This one is also going to complete its funding on Tuesday, November the 15th. This is a game for 3 to 6 players that plays in about 60 to 90 minutes. Complexity on the game is medium light, and we're going to set the risk associated with this campaign at medium low. Now, this is a sequel game to the King's Dilemma, which was very similar. They're both legacy campaign games, but they're very much centered around negotiations and storytelling and voting and things like that. So there's going to be a lot of table talk. You're deciding what to do, but it's all kind of like on a storytelling conceptual level. You know, it's not so much like a dungeon crawler. You're not pushing around miniatures on a map. You're not building little things. There's not a lot of components in that sense. This is more about ideas and talking and how you sort of as influencers determine a regime and how that regime runs and rules and evolves. It's co-designed by Hjalmar Hawk, who's designed Dragon's Castle, the first game in the series, The King's Dilemma, Photosynthesis, Railroad Ink. Blazing Red Edition, and Railroad Ink. Deep Blue Edition, and Lorenzo Silva, who's worked on Dragon's Castle, The King's Dilemma, Potion Explosion, and both of those Railroad Ink editions. It has art by Martin Modet, who's worked on The Magnificent, Revive, and Vampire the Masquerade Vendetta. And it's being published by Horrible Guild, who have published Dragon's Castle, The King's Dilemma, Potion Explosion, and both Railroad Ink editions. There are 3 different pledge levels for this campaign. For $101, you can pledge Basic, that'll get you the game, and the Age of Disorder expansion kit. For $131, you can pledge at the standard pledge level, which will add in a recharge kit, so you can play through the campaign a second time. And at the $161 Royal pledge, you're going to add on metal coins, 60 of them, and wooden resources, 200. You'll also be getting a metal leader token and a metal moderator token at that pledge level. Now, if you're interested in the King's Dilemma, which is the first game in the series, that's not being offered through this campaign, you cannot add it on. However, you can get it right now on special until this campaign is over at Horrible Guild's website. And they're offering sort of a bundle package with it. You're gonna get this oversized map that you can track your progress of your campaign on. You'll also be getting a prequel scenario. Both of those 2 things are not in the retail edition. Now, I've kind of looked and crunched some of the numbers with this. If you get it through their website, which also includes free shipping, you're going to be paying about $20 to $25 more than you would if you ordered it at something like Game Nerds. However, if you decided you wanted to get the game through Game Nerds, but you wanted to get just those other 2 items, you'd need to go through Horrible Guild's website to get those items. You'd no longer have free shipping if you did that, because you wouldn't be pledging the special bundle. So to get those 2 items, you'd end up paying $20 to $25, and you'd pay shipping on them. So if you did it that way, you'd actually end up paying more than just getting the bundle. Also, you wouldn't qualify for free shipping from a retailer like Game Nerds just for getting the King's Dilemma. You'd have to add on other games. That might not be a problem. You might have other games that you want to get, but you still would have to put other things in your cart to be able to qualify for the free shipping. And if you wanted those 2 extra items, you'd still have to pay for them elsewhere. So even though this bundle will cost you $20 to $25 more than probably the best deal that you can find the game for elsewhere, if you want those extra items, that's the way to do it. If you just want the retail game without those things, then you can probably find it at a retailer like Game Nerds or Card House or Cool Stuff Inc. or Miniature Market for $20 to $25, less than you'll get it on the Horrible Guild website. You can, however, add the new digital version of the King's Dilemma to your pledges and add-on for $15. And for $35, you can add on a King's Dilemma recharge pack. So you can't get the game through this campaign, but if you get the game elsewhere or you already have it, you can get a recharge pack for the King's Dilemma through this campaign as an add-on. Shipping in the continental US is being estimated at $20 or $35, but they're not being very clear about that range. So I'm not entirely sure if the difference is for the pledge level, in which case maybe it's $20 for the first 2 pledges and then $35 if you add on the coins and the resources and those 2 metal statues. But it may also have to do if you're living in a part of the country. I think there's 3 states that have a Horrible Guild warehouse where you would also need to pay taxes. I think that could be the thing that's upgrading that shipping from $20 to $35. So it's not completely clear, but it's going to be somewhere between either $20 or $35, depending on what you order and where you are. Finally, Horrible Guild is planning on delivering the Queen's Dilemma in December of 2023. Aqua Garden Beachcombing expansion had a minimum required funding goal of $10,000. They're currently at $231,000, which is about 22.5 times that minimum required funding goal. This one's going to complete its campaign a day later than the previous 3 on Wednesday, November the 16th. It's a game for 1 to 4 players that plays in about 40 to 60 minutes. Complexity on the game is medium light, and we're going to set the risk associated with this campaign medium high. Now, this game thematically is about collecting different kinds of fish in tanks. You're going to have 6 different tanks on your player board, and you're doing set collection, basically. You're trying to get different fish in different tanks to fulfill different scoring opportunities. And the central board has a rondelle mechanism, so you'll be going around that, looping that to determine which fish you get every turn to add to one of your tanks. It's designed by Tatsuka Chuo, who worked on the original Aqua Garden, as well as Ostia and Perfumery. And the art here is by Tatsuki Asaro, who also worked on Ostia. The publisher is Yuchi Bakoya, who has published Amalfi, Aqua Garden, and Tank Chess. For $38, you can pledge the Beachcoming Pledge. That's going to get you the new expansion, as well as a mini expansion that was determined and voted on by backers. Now, there are 6 of these to date. There were 3 with the original game. There's 3 more with this new expansion. This pledge level will just get you the first of the 3 new mini expansions. It's called New Facility Expansion 04. The 04 refers to it being sort of first in line with the new mini expansions. So the base game had mini expansions labeled 1 to 3, and this new campaign has 3 new expansions labeled 4 through 6. So this is the 4th. And it has advanced fish tokens that you'll be able to use as variants. This game has a lot of fish tokens. They almost look like meeples, and a lot of what you're doing is trying to get those different combinations of fish tokens or meeples into your various tanks. So with all of the different mini expansions, they're giving you different tokens and different scoring opportunities. If you pledge $58, you'll get Beachcombing plus 3 expansions. That's all 3 of the new mini expansions. So you'll also be getting 5 and 6. Those are called Sea Mimicry and Seaside Cottage. $84 is called Aqua Garden and Beachcombing. That's just going to get you the new expansion and that number 4 mini expansion, but you'll also be getting the base game. If you pledge $135, which is called Full Complete Pledge, you'll get the new expansion, you'll get the 3 new mini expansions, 4 through 6, you'll get the base game, and you'll get the 3 older mini expansions, 1 through 3. Those are called Outdoor, Sea Jewelry, and Garden Sea King. Now, as far as add-ons go, for $45, you can add on the Aqua Garden base game. For $37, you can add on the new Beachcombing expansion. And this expansion, if I haven't mentioned this before, the game has you putting fish in various tanks. So the Beachcombing expansion has you dealing with things you might find on the beach. There's some garbage items, but there's also seashells. So you'll be dealing with all of those, and there's meeples for all of that stuff. For $10, you can add on all 6 mini expansions. For $55, you can add on a different game from the same publisher and designer called Ostia. And for $20, you can add on a game called The Arctic. In the continental US, if you're pledging just the expansion, your estimated shipping is $18. If you're pledging the expansion and all 3 mini expansions, then it's $22. If you're pledging the 3rd pledge level, the base game and the new expansion, your estimated shipping is $20. And if you're pledging the full complete pledge, then your estimated shipping is $31. Finally, Yuchi Bakoya is planning on delivering this new Aqua Garden expansion in April of 2023. Our final campaign for the week is Spirit Island Nature Incarnate. This one's over on Backerkit. So the other 4 campaigns that I've been talking about are all on Kickstarter. This is the only one that's elsewhere, and it's on Backerkit. It had a minimum required funding goal of $40,000. They're currently at $955,000, which is about 24 times that minimum required funding goal. Spirit Island is going to complete its funding on Thursday, November the 17th. This is a game for 1 to 6 players that plays in about 90 to 120 minutes. Complexity on the game is heavy, and we're going to set the risk associated with this campaign at medium-low. Now, this is a cooperative game. It's got mechanics like action retrieval, variable player powers, hand management, and they don't actually list it as tower defense on Board Game Geek, but it kind of is tower defense. Essentially what's happening in this game is that the players are all playing different spirits. Some are very based in nature, some are more magical, but they're all spirits that are around this island that are trying to protect that island from invading colonists. The game's designed by R. Eric Reus, who's designed Fealty, Horizons of Spirit Island, which is the sort of lighter version that you can find in stores like Target, and the original Spirit Island. It's got art from Inez de Brauieka, Kat Guevara, Emily Hancock, who's worked on Gift of Tulips, Merchants of Musiris, and Muse Awakenings, David Markuski, Nolan Nasser, who's worked on Fleet the Dice Game, New Bedford, and the original Spirit Island, and Ala Yassin. It's being published by Greater Than Games, who've previously put out Sentinels of the Multiverse, the original Spirit Island, and TAC. There are 7 different pledge levels on this, and they all have really long, cumbersome names. So I'll just be putting probably the first word of each of those pledge levels over here. They're just too long to include the whole name. For $55, you can pledge Exaltation of the Incandescent Skies. That's going to get you the new expansion, as well as the Spirit cards are going to be foils. So you'll get foils for all of the spirit cards. And that's kind of a new thing with this version. They're giving you these shinier, cooler little spirit cards. So that will be for the new expansion, but they're also going back and creating these spirit foils for all of the previous stuff as well. For $70, you can pledge Rumbling Earthquakes. That's just going to give you everything from the previous pledge level, plus sleeves. For $90, you can pledge Flocking Red Talons. That's going to take the sleeves back out of the pledge, but it will give you the new premium token pack. For $125, you can pledge Bargain of Coursing Paths. That's going to give you everything in the previous pledge level and then add the sleeves back in. This next pledge level, $300, Fragments of Yesteryear. This is where the pledge starts to get really big because they're adding in all of the previous content. So for this pledge level, you'll be getting the new expansion, Nature Incarnate. You'll be getting the base game. You'll be getting the 2 previous expansions, Branch and Claw and Jagged Edge. You'll be getting something that they're now calling an expansion, Feathers and Flame, but this is a combination of the 2 promo packs that were available previously. So they're just combining them. They're calling this kind of like a mini expansion. And then you'll be getting these spirit foils for all of the spirits. For $340, Visions Out of Time, you'll get everything in that previous pledge level, and then you'll add in that new premium token pack. For $470, a pledge level that's called Solidify Echoes of Majesty Past, you're going to be getting all of that stuff that I've just mentioned, and then you're going to add on to that the previous premium token pack number 1, the premium invader board, and then enough sleeves for everything. So that's 6 packs of the colossal sleeves. There's not a lot in the colossal sleeves. These are the sleeves for the spirits, so they're these bigger sleeves. 5 packs of standard sleeves for all the cards in the game, and then 1 pack of the mini Euro sleeves for the smaller cards. Shipping in the continental US is being estimated at $10 to $16. However, they're saying that, if you add on extra stuff, you are going to be going up into the higher range of that pledge estimation. However, if they're still setting that $16 as a max, and that is the shipping price, for the big all-in pledge, that is an amazing deal on shipping that's probably been subsidized in some way. Finally, and this is a little bit weird, Greater Than Games has not put out a date for estimated delivery. I guess they're just going to wait for the future to do that. So, normally when you pledge a Kickstarter, the games come in about a year to 2 years. Usually, historically, it's been closer to a year or even less if it's a smaller production. If it's a bigger game, it can edge into the 2-year time. And then with all of the global shipping delays, it's been sometimes extending even longer than 2 years. So I would estimate this probably coming in about a year, maybe around December of 2023, but they haven't actually put out an arrival date. So the best that I can do is really guess, and at some point in the future, they'll make that date known. Now let's quickly talk about the 6 games that I personally pledged from last week's video. First of those is Cthulhu, Death May Die, Fear of the Unknown. This was, I think, only the second CMON game that I've pledged, just because their campaigns are huge and enormous, and I haven't really wanted to dabble too much in those. I did pledge Trudvang Legends, but that was actually a bit of a smaller game, and it went through a lot of development redesign, but it didn't have all of these kind of boxes you normally see in CMON campaigns. I do really like the Cthulhu mythos, and Cthulhu Death May Die is a game that I've been wanting for a long time. So it seemed like with these new iterations, Season 3 and Season 4, and all of the additional stuff, it was a really good time for me to go ahead and get that. It's kind of become a grail game for me. I've also gone ahead and ordered Season 1 with the 2 Elder Gods that are available. I did that, I think, through Miniature Market, and I'll just have to keep my eyes peeled for Season 2 when that eventually comes back in stock somewhere else. So this was a big pledge. I went all in for this one, and I'm really excited when this eventually shows up. But it's a dungeon crawler. It's got lots of miniatures. It's in the Cthulhu mythos, and it's craziness. And this is something that once I launch the Twitch channel, I'll be really excited to play streaming and show it off to everybody and have you all be able to enjoy it with us. I also pledged Destinies Witchwood, which is the new expansion for Destinies. That is a 1 to 3 player storytelling game where you're moving around a board, you're interacting with tiles, you're trying to solve little puzzles and complete your storyline. And it's somewhat limited because as you play it once, maybe twice, you're going to know everything that happens. But I think this is another one that would be great to do on streaming so that people who don't have the game and want to just enjoy the narrative experience of it can do that without having to own the game themselves. I pledged Life of the Amazonia, which is from Bad Comet, who previously did Wild Serengeti. Both of those games have amazing sets of animal meeples. You're going to be moving animal meeples around the board, doing some pattern building. There's tile placement involved and bag building with this one. But I really liked Wild Serengeti. I thought it was unique, and I liked all the animal meeples, and so I was down to pledge their next game. It's somewhat similar. I also picked up the Mosaic expansion, Wars and Disasters. That is a new civilization game with building miniatures. I did the colossal version with the building miniatures from Glenn Drover. He's designed Railways of the World, which is one of my favorite games. I like train games a lot, so I have both that one and Age of Steam. And more recently, he's done Raccoon Tycoon and Lizard Wizard. I like Glenn as a designer. I think he's very smart. And I did back Mosaic the first time around, so I wanted to get the new content for it. I also backed Pampero, which is a new heavy Euro from Julian Pombo, who did some work with Lacerda on Lisboa and the Lisboa solo mode, and then helped him co-design Mercado de Lisboa. And so he's kind of branching out on his own now. He's got his own design. It has to do with wind farms, and it looks very much like a Lacerda game. And the art is being done by Tool, who is Lacerda's almost constant collaborator. And I really, really like Tool's art. So I'm excited about Pampero. Hopefully it will kind of be able to hold its own against Lacerda's designs. And finally, I pledged Race to the Raft, which is the new game from Frank West, who did Isle of Cats. This one is also a tile placement game, but it's cooperative. It's got 81 different scenarios that you can play through. So it sounded very cool to me. I'm certainly up for a cooperative kind of version of Isle of Cats, and I like things that have lots of scenarios and long campaigns that you can have a variable and deep experience with. It's also got these really cool cat miniatures. I, however, did not back the cat miniatures for Isle of Cats. I think that my Isle of Cats is good enough the way it is. I kind of have the big box with all the stuff for it, and I didn't feel the need to also get the cat miniatures for that. But I did get the version that has the cat miniatures for Race to the Raft, and there's only a few of them. There's like 12 of them in Race to the Raft, but they look really cute. I'm sure they'll be fun to play with. Now, the only new acquisition that I have this week is Path of Light and Shadow with the new Solstice expansion. This is a miniature game, kind of. There's some area majority in it. There's some deck building. It's kind of a civilization game. I've heard that it doesn't really do new things, but it refines the genre so well, and it does what it does very, very well. It's also got a creative team, a lot of people that I like. Jonathan Gilmour is one of the designers, Nick Little, Beth Sobel's one of the artists. So I'm really excited to get that one to the table, both with and without the Solstice expansion, and just dive in to everything that game is and what it's supposed to do so well. I'll be back in another week with another Kickstarter weekly video. I'm continuing to get my studio space put together upstairs. Eventually, before the end of the year, hopefully, I will be back to doing teach and review videos with new and better equipment, so everything will look much better than it has in the past. And I'll be launching a Twitch channel, which will be streaming games, all kinds of games, campaign games, solo games, Euros. And at that point, I'll be launching a Patreon. Please don't forget to like and subscribe. That is the best way to support the channel at this point in time. And let me know if any of the campaigns that I talked about this week are things that interested you specifically. And also if Path of Light and Shadow, along with the Solstice expansion, are games that you would like to hear my take on in a review or see a teach video for. Play lots of great games. I'll try to get in some good games myself, and I'll talk about those in next week's video. Until then, take care, and I'll see you soon.